could you please ensure that your microphone is muted, just to minimize the amount of background noise and feedback that may interfere with the meeting. So we should get underway in about just less than 5 minutes. After your item is completed by the committee, we will move you back to the attendee list where you can continue to watch and observe the proceedings tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, Peter. Councillor Williams checking in.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. You're coming through loud and clear. Mr. Chair, just before we get started, I do see somebody that's called in on the telephone only, so I'm just going to unmute that individual so they can identify themselves. The person that's called in by telephone, can you please identify yourself? The person that's called in the telephone number with the 10-digit code, can you please identify yourself?
Good evening, Peter. It's Gurdeep Kaur.
Okay, thank you. So when we get to your item, I'll unmute you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, it is 7 o'clock. I just need to verify that we have a quorum present. I see Councillor Visante, Councillor Paleshi, yourself, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Dillon, Councillor Williams. So we do have bare quorum. I should advise that Councillor Fortini has sent his regrets this evening. He's absent for personal reasons. So you can proceed.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual meeting of Brampton's Planning and Development Committee. We will begin the meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll call for attendance at today's meeting.
Members of committee, I will call your name. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Santos. Councillor Santos.
Hi there.
Thank you.
Present.
Councillor Vasante?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Willens? I don't see Councillor Willens at the moment. I'll come back. Councillor Paleshi?
Present.
Councillor Bowman?
Present.
Councillor Williams?
I'm here.
Councillor Singh? Councillor Singh, this is roll call.
I'm here, present.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon?
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Medeiros. Councillor Willens? I don't see Councillor Willens. Mr. Chair, you do have quorum. You have 8 members present.
Thank you very much. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Does any member wish to add a business item to tonight's meeting? If so, please use the chat function in WebEx to add your name to the speakers list. I see none.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Just a few updates I just wish to make note of. There was a revised, updated agenda emailed out to members of council about an hour and a half ago. We do have additional delegations. It'll be for item 6.2. The 5th delegate will be Sylvia Roberts. Item 6.7 is an added delegation from Sylvia Roberts regarding the Section 37 density bonusing. And we do have additional correspondence regarding statutory public notice item 5.2, and it's identified as 11.5 on the online agenda. And the clerk's office has received a late piece of correspondence that is identified as 11.6 and will be emailed to members. It is published right now. It is regarding item 7.6 on today's agenda. It's from Christian Horizons regarding the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for supportive housing policies. So that'll be 11.6 on the agenda.
okay, thank you very much. As I see, there's no further additions to the agenda. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Paleshi to approve the agenda, that the agenda for the Planning and Development Committee meeting of October 18th be approved. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, I see none. And just as a reminder to everyone that the public can still access and participate in the meeting in a number of ways, watching this meeting remotely through the city's live stream and playback of the archived video stream, registering with the city clerk's office as a virtual delegate to participate in the meeting, or submitting questions about the agenda business and recommendations made by committee today by emailing the city clerk's office at cityclerksoffice@brampton.ca with your question, which may be read into the public meeting record during the 50-minute public question period before the end of the meeting. Also continue to follow important service and public health updates through the city's website at brampton.ca. Our next item, declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest? I see none, so the clerk will note for the meeting minutes. Consent motion. As part of our new consent motion process, I will read each agenda item in the subject to the consent motion. Any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any of the following agenda items will not be subject to the consent motion for approval: delegations, presentations, added new business, member discussion items, public question period. So I'll start reading the relevant agenda items, and members can identify any items to be held for debate. First item 7.1, regarding staff presentation, urban community hub design concepts and initiation of pilots at Uptown, Brampton, and Queen Street East Precinct is held because there are delegations. Item 7.2 will be held as well as there are delegations. And item 7.3 regarding density bonus, not only for presentation but also for delegations. Item 7.4 is held for a presentation regarding item 7.3. And item 6.4, we do have a delegation and a presentation. Item 7.6 is held because of a presentation, and that's our staff presentation regarding city-initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to the city's supportive housing policies, an amendment to the group home registration bylaw. And if I can just get a clarification, City Clerk, I believe that staff's recommendation is to defer that to for the next planning meeting. I believe at the request of Councillor Fortini, who can't be with here today. So do we take care of this now, or would that be at a later time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you can deal with it now if that's the wish, is to defer this.
Yeah.
on behalf of Councillor Fortini if committee wishes to do that. So they would be deferring item 7.6. They would also be deferring related correspondence 11.6 and staff report 10.1.
So I would move deferral, and that's been okayed by staff. So there was a discussion with staff as the chair and vice chair, and they're fine with that. So I would like that to be reflected as well. Item 7.7, it's held for a presentation. Now, item 7.8, a staff report regarding application to amend the zoning bylaw, East and West Incorporated, Glen Schnarr & Associates, to permit a truck transport terminal on west side of Regional Road 50 and north of Old Castlemore Road, Ward 10. In consent, item 7.9 is held because of a delegation, item 6.5. Item 7.10 will be held due to a presentation by 7.7. Item 7.11, it will also be held due to the presentation 7.7. Item 7.12, staff report regarding 2021 development activity report is held because of the presentation 7.7. Item 7.13, staff report regarding application to amend the zoning bylaw and draft plan of subdivision Daniels HR Corporation to permit 890 residential dwelling units, a public park, and a public road north side of Bouvard, west of Credit View Road, Ward 6. In consent, item 8.1, Brampton Heritage Board minutes, September 21st. In consent, item 10.1, staff report regarding city-initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to the city supportive housing policies. That's already going to be deferred, or will be deferred. Discussion item at the request of Councillor Dillon addressing residential driveways beyond regulatory requirements. Item 10.2, that's held for discussion. Item 10.3, presentation delegation. Item 11.1, correspondence regarding Minister's Zoning Order Resolution Request, Lark Investments Incorporated, from Mustafa Ghassan from Delta Urban Incorporated, dated October 5th.
Through the chair, this is Councillor Williams. I would like to see that deferred to Wednesday, or I can deal with that at the time it comes up in the agenda.
Okay, so you would like to defer this. So City Clerk, can we achieve that in this motion as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as part of the consent motion, you can move a motion to refer 11.1 to council on Wednesday, if that's the intent.
Okay,
Yeah.
so noted by Councillor, moved by Councillor Williams. Item 11.2, correspondence regarding item 5.1, city-initiated official plan amendment, residential rental conversion demolition policy from Ron Fay, hold for statutory public meeting item 5.1. Item 11.3, correspondence regarding items 7.8, application to amend the zoning bylaw, East and West Incorporated, Glen Schnarr & Associates. I believe we've, Castlemore from Francis Johnson, Brampton resident, dated October 7th. So I believe that was moved in consent as well. And that is the following. So City Clerk, if you can do a yeoman's job, just again to, because I believe that it is a recorded vote. And I believe I have a motion moved by Councillor Williams to approve the consent motion, the referral to to this Wednesday's council meeting of the item, Councillor Williams, and the deferral to next planning meeting in 2 weeks, moved by myself on behalf of Councillor Fortini. So I'll hand it over to you for the recorded vote, and if you can summarize everything that we've stated.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly. So the first item as part of the consent motion is a deferral at the request of Councillor Medeiros on behalf of Councillor Fortini for item 7.6, a staff presentation, and the related staff report 10.1, and the related correspondence 11.6 regarding city-initiated official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to the city's supportive housing policies and amendment to the group home registration bylaw. Added to the consent motion will be item 7.8, a staff report regarding an application to amend the zoning bylaw, Glen Schnarr & Associates to permit a truck transport terminal west side of Regional Road 50 and north of Old Castlemore Road in Ward 10. Also added to the consent motion is 7.13, And it is a staff report regarding an application to amend the zoning bylaw and a draft plan of subdivision, Daniels HR Corporation, to permit 890 residential units, a public park, a public road, north of Beauvair Drive, west of Credit View in Ward 6. Also added to consent is 8.1, the Brampton Heritage Board minutes of September 21st. And added to consent is correspondence item 11.3, and this is regarding staff report item 7.8, regarding the Glenn Schnarr and Associates application, the west side of Regional Road 50 and north of Old Castlemore Road. And also, at the request of Councillor Williams, item 11.1, correspondence regarding a Minister Zoning Order resolution request, Lark Investments, from Mustafa Ghassan, Delta Urban, is being referred as part of the consent motion to Council on Wednesday. A recorded vote's been requested. All in favor, please indicate.
City Clerk, my apologies, City Clerk. I do have Councillor Pelleshi is asking about item 11.4. City Clerk, if maybe you can address why that's not in the consent motion consideration.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just let me bring up 11.4. 11.4 is correspondence in regards to the urban design, urban community hub design concepts and initiation of pilots at Uptown Brampton and Queen Street East Precinct. So there is a staff presentation with that. So normally we keep all of those together with the staff report, and they'll be considered at the same time.
Okay. Councillor Pelleshi, are you okay with that?
No, I'm a little bit, I don't understand. Correspondence is separate. No, we don't usually keep that with the item. We have other items. We have other items that are related to other staff presentations that just went into consent. Do we not?
We do not in the list that we've gone through so far.
11.3.
11.3 is correspondence.
For
It's in regards to item 7.8, which is identified for consideration with the consent motion.
And Peter, did you not say that there was an added item as well?
There was an added item 11.6, which was correspondence in regards to item 7.6 on today's agenda regarding, it is the group home registration bylaw amendment and the city supportive housing policies, and that is being considered for deferral to the November 1st Planning Committee.
That'll go in deferral too. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Sorry, I got logged off because of network issues. My apologies. The item that I had added, I wanted to defer it. Can I do it now, or do I have to wait?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as committee seems to be dealing with deferrals and referrals at this time as well, it would be consistent for committee to deal with this as a deferral. Councillor Dillon, you're referring to item 10.2, your discussion item regarding addressing residential driveways beyond regulatory requirements.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So is your intent to defer it to the next meeting on November 1st?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, I can proceed with the consent motion vote unless there's any other questions.
Okay, go ahead, City Clerk. Thank you.
All in favor of the consent motion, Councillor Santos?
Yes.
Councillor Vasante?
Yes, in favor.
Councillor Pelleshi?
In favor.
Councillor Bowman?
Yes.
Councillor Williams?
Yes.
Councillor Singh?
Yes.
Councillor Dillon?
Yes.
Chair Medeiros?
Yes.
That motion carries 8-0.
Thank you very much. Our next item is our statutory public meeting reports. And just as a reminder for those in attendance or virtually, this is a public meeting of the Planning and Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at this public meeting are the results of applications made under the Planning Act. These are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. Tonight we have one city-initiated proposal for a statutory public meeting. The intent of this public meeting is to receive submissions from the public regarding these proposals. Given we may have persons watching this meeting through the city's live stream, we will have staff present each proposal subject to a statutory public meeting unless committee decides otherwise. After receiving any pre-registered delegations, members of the committee may ask questions for clarification, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. The city has also posted to its website supporting information and documentation for the development applications for public review and reference. We will now proceed to consider the 2 items on this evening's statutory public meeting agenda. After consideration of these public meeting items, committee will deal with the balance of the agenda items on tonight's agenda. So our first statutory item is 5.1, City Initiated Official Plan Amendment, Residential Rental Conversion and Demolition Policy. I will ask the clerk if we've received any submissions or requests to delegate the committee on this application.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have one delegation request from on behalf of an applicant representative after the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will now hand it over to Melinda Yogendran, our Assistant Policy Planner, Planning, Building and Economic Development. Welcome, Melinda.
Thank you, Councillor. Good evening, members of the committee, staff, and everyone in attendance at this evening's meeting. My name is Melinda Yogendran. I am a policy planner, and alongside Bindu Shah, a principal planner, we are initiating this citywide official plan amendment to provide greater protection to Brampton's existing rental housing stock by implementing regulations for rental unit conversion and demolition in the city. In today's presentation, I will be providing some background on rental housing demand and rental conversion and demolition in Brampton, and I will also provide an overview of how other municipalities are regulating rental conversion and demolition before going over the draft official plan amendment being presented today. Next slide, please. The OPA being presented today will apply citywide. Next slide, please. The process to date, as many may know, Housing Brampton, the city's housing strategy and action plan, was approved and endorsed by Council on May 19th of this year. And this OPA is a part of the implementation of Housing Brampton. Today, we are bringing forward the information report to the Planning and Development Committee and hosting the statutory public meeting. Next slide, please. Thank you. As I mentioned, Housing Brampton was endorsed on May 19th. In the strategy, 6 implementation pathways are identified, one of them being implementing the right policies. Under this section, rental conversion and demolition is identified as a policy focus area to be reviewed in detail through official plan amendment processes. Today's proposed amendment also delivers on Big Move 1 of the strategy by delivering on its objective to increase the supply of purpose-built rental housing for low and moderate income households. Next slide, please. CMHC and the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board's data suggests a strong need for more primary rental options in the city, specifically for purpose-built rental, as affordability continues to be a challenge across Brampton, the Peel region, and the Greater Toronto Area. The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board's data for 2019 average market rents for apartments, which includes rentals not considered a part of the purpose-built universe, such as rented condominiums, shows that there are no apartment types, either bachelor, 1, 2, or 3 bedroom units, that are affordable to Brampton renter households in or below the 6th income decile. As a growing number of residents will turn to the rental market for more affordable housing options, protecting the existing purpose-built rental stock is imperative. Next slide, please. Currently, CMHC undertakes a rental housing market survey each year. Vacancy rate refers to the percentage of rental housing units that are vacant in the survey area. So that's either the municipality or submarket of the municipality at the time the survey is undertaken. As shown in the table on this slide, the city's rental vacancy rate in 2020 was 2.4%, up from 1.3% in 2019 and 1.1% in 2018, whereas a 3% vacancy rate reflects a healthy market. It's also important to note here that the increase in the rental vacancy rate to 2.4% in 2020, despite being still relatively low, may be influenced by COVID-19 and the resulting decrease in demand for rental housing. However, with trends changing and demand increasing once again, that is expected to change. Overall, low vacancy rates in Brampton indicate a strong rental demand and limited rental supply. Next slide, please. Currently, official plan policy 4.2.1.12 encourages the maintenance of a minimum rental vacancy of 2%. However, despite this policy being in place since 2006, the conversion of Brampton's limited rental, purpose-built rental housing has continued. So the city has received a total of 9 development applications seeking to convert rental units to condominium tenure, and approximately 348 units were approved for conversion between 2003 and 2021. Next slide, please. In addition, very few purpose-built rentals have been constructed in recent years. CMHC's Housing Information Portal shows that 0% of housing completions in Brampton between 2017 and 2019 were rental tenure, with 81% homeowner and 19% condominium completions. So primary rental units make up such a small proportion of all housing completions in Brampton, and very few units constructed over the last 18 years have been rental, which poses an issue given the low vacancy rates and increasing need for housing for seniors and students and low and middle income households. Generally, ownership projects are more common because they generate larger and faster returns than a rental building project, and financing for ownership projects is easier to obtain. Stronger policies can protect the existing rental stock throughout the city, and in areas that are well supported by transit options, this will help achieve compact, complete communities with a full mix and range of housing, including affordable and rental housing options. Next slide, please. We have completed a benchmarking exercise of rental housing protection measures in other Canadian municipalities. So staff reviewed 7 measures across 12 municipalities, 2 of which are highlighted here. In the case of regulating conversion and demolition through rental housing protection bylaws, many municipalities set conditions under which conversion and demolition are permitted. In Mississauga, each demolition application is evaluated on the basis of 2 tests. The city's vacancy rate is 3% or more, and existing rents are above the affordable rate at 1.75 times average market rent, in line with households in the 6th income decile. If both of those tests are met, a demolition permit will be issued with no conditions to replace or retain the units. If condition 1 and 2 are not met, a permit may be issued with conditions for replacement of those units, in which case the rental units must be replaced at similar rents, and tenants must be notified and provided with the right to return to those replacement units. Similarly, in Toronto, any new development that would result in the loss of 6 or more rental housing units will not be approved unless the rental housing units are replaced with new units that are similar in size, type, and rent. And the tenant relocation and assistance during redevelopment with the right to return must be provided. Using these conditions, the City of Toronto secured the replacement of over 800 affordable and mid-range rental units proposed to be demolished, many of which were replaced in new condo developments. Next slide, please. So there's one proposed official plan amendment associated with the information report. The purpose of this OPA is to amend the city's residential rental housing protection policy to provide better protection for Brampton's existing rental housing stock and ensure that the city's current and future residents have access to affordable and rental housing options. As I mentioned, the current policy only encourages the maintenance of a 2% minimum vacancy rate, whereas a 3% rate reflects a balanced rental market. Therefore, the proposed policy amendment seeks to prohibit conversions of residential rental properties exceeding 6 units if the city's average vacancy rate for the preceding 3 years is below 3%, as determined by CMHC. Demolitions of rental housing stock exceeding 6 units would also not be permitted if it adversely affects the supply of rental housing and the achievement of the region or the city's housing targets, unless replacement rental units are provided. Next slide, please. Requiring the replacement of rental units is an important part of ensuring the maintenance of the city's housing stock amidst demolition and renewal projects. So the conditions state that any new development that would result in the loss of 6 or more rental housing units will not be approved unless the units will be replaced with the same or higher number of units of comparable size, type, and affordability. In the case of a change in the built form, for example, from a townhome to an apartment style, the city will provide flexibility and give due consideration to the unit sizes and types of the replacement units. In addition, further consultation is going to be done with BUILD, the Building Industry and Land Development Association, and city departments to help explore and refine and finalize these requirements within the proposed OPA. Next slide, please. Lastly, conditions for tenant relocation and assistance are guided by Section 52 and 53 of the Residential Tenancies Act, which requires that the owner of the residential rental property notify any tenants who reside in the rental units if the owner requires possession of the rental unit, that tenants be given at least 120 days notice if it is necessary for them to vacate their units for demolition purposes, and that tenant relocation and assistance with a right for the tenants to return must be provided. Next slide, please. In terms of implementation and evaluation of proposals, the city will require an assessment report with a formal development application, which will include an explanation of the project proposal, relevant data on vacancy rates, and a proposed replacement, relocation, and assistance approach. City staff will review the report to determine eligibility of the proposal, and if a recommendation report for the city-initiated official plan amendment is received, further details for requirements regarding tenant assistance and relocation, affordability of replacement units, and assessing vacancy rates and housing targets will be provided by staff in a guidelines for application review document. Next slide, please. Foundational direction for rental conversion and demolition policies are provided in the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, the Municipal Act, and the Region of Peel's current official plan. These policy documents authorize municipalities to regulate demolition and conversion of multi-unit residential rental properties. They direct planning authorities to provide for a range and mix of housing types and encourage municipalities to develop official plan policies with criteria to regulate conversion and demolition of residential rental units to ensure an adequate supply of rental housing stock. Policy guidance is also provided in the draft regional official plan, and the draft policies contained in this report align with the regional direction to put local official plan policies in place that protect rental housing. Next slide, please. Following this public meeting, the proposed OPA will be circulated for consultation, and staff will collect, review, and incorporate public, technical, and other comments before bringing forward a recommendation report for council adoption. Next slide, please. The information report and this presentation are available on the city's website on the meetings and agendas page. Again, my name is Melinda Yogandran. Please feel free to contact myself or Principal Planner Bindu Shah. Both of our contact information is provided on this slide here. And with that, Mr. Chair, I conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I believe now, City Clerk, we do have a delegation.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I wish to correct that. I was referring to 5.2. We're looking at my notes. So for 5.1, this item, all we have is correspondence 11.2. On the agenda, and there are no delegation requests for this item.
Okay, so I believe I do have Councillor Palushy. You would like to speak to this?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, my apologies. I just saw that you asked to take off. Okay, thank you very much. So I don't see any further questions of clarification. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente to approve the staff report recommendations and applicant delegation that just the staff report recommendations and correspondence that the report regarding city-initiated official plan amendment, residential rental conversions demolition policy to the Planning and Development Committee meeting of October 18th be received, and that staff be reported to report back to Planning and Development Committee with the results of the public meeting and staff recommendations. Is there anyone opposed? I see none, so the statutory public meeting for this item is now adjourned. We go now to our next item, and that's item 5.2, application to amend the zoning bylaw and proposed draft plan of subdivision, TAC developments, Gore Road, Ward 10. And I will hand it over to Alex Sepp, from our development planner from the Planning, Building and Economic Development Division. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. Good evening, Chair, committee members, staff, and members of public. My name is Alex Seppi. I'm the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by Candipcon Limited, prepared on behalf of TAC Development Gore Road Limited. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located within Ward 10 in the eastern part of Brampton. It is located on the east side of the Gore Road, north of Cottrell Boulevard. The site is municipally addressed as 9459 the Gore Road. Next slide, please. Thank you. The applicant is proposing to create a residential plan of subdivision. In total, the applicant is proposing to create a total of 196 residential units, comprised of 69 townhouse units, 127 single detached homes of varying frontages, a park and natural heritage feature buffer block. Next slide, please. So additional details corresponding to the site. The following roads will be extended, which include Freedom Oaks Trail, Tustin Road, Thorndale Road, and Avena Road. There's also a proposal for 2 new residential streets, Street A and Street B. In addition to the plan of subdivision, a zoning bylaw amendment is required to facilitate the proposed development. Next slide, please. So this map shows the properties within 240 meters of the proposed development. Owners of these properties would have received notice by direct mail with respect to the proposal. Notice was also provided in the Brampton Guardian newspaper and on the City of Brampton website. I have received correspondence from some of the neighboring properties which have been appended to this agenda. Next slide, please. So as mentioned before, the site is located north of Cottrell Boulevard and east of the Gore Road. The surrounding land uses to the north comprise of low-density residential and Castlebrook Secondary School. To the south, there is, again, low-density residential and open space. To the east, there's open space, which is a regulated TRCA area, and additional residential homes further east. And to the west is comprised of residential low-density homes and open space. Next slide, please. Current planning status. So the subject property is designated residential and open space in the City of Brampton official plan. An amendment to the official plan is not required to facilitate the proposed development. Next slide. So the property is sub-designated low and medium density residential and valley land in the Bram East secondary plan. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required to permit the proposed development. Next slide. The subject property is currently zoned agricultural and floodplain. An amendment to the zoning bylaw will be required in order to permit the proposed development. Current issues. There's 4 current issues that staff are reviewing and monitoring for this file with our initial review. So staff are reviewing the site layouts to ensure a high quality design and connectivity. Just north to the subject parcel, there are part lots that were previously owned by Democrat Homes. TAC Developments has confirmed that they have purchased and closed on those part lots from Democrat Homes, and it will be added to the current proposed plan of subdivision. The size of the proposed park will be reviewed to ensure it can adequately service the surrounding neighborhood. And the site is also being reviewed for its current street configuration for the new and existing street extensions. Next slide, please. So prior to finalizing recommendations to Council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act, Provincial Policy Statement, conformity with the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal Official Plan, and the City of Brampton Official Plan. Next slide, please. So this slide shows where staff are at in the review of the application. The notice has been circulated to city departments as well as other agencies for technical comments. Notice of the public meeting was given to property owners in the vicinity of the property and published in the newspaper and on the city's website. Important to note, the application was deemed complete on August 27th, 2021. We are now at the public meeting stage. Committee members and staff are here to listen to any feedback. After tonight's public meeting, comments received from city departments, agencies, members of the public, and matters raised through the public delegations will be reviewed and evaluated. The proposal will be further assessed against the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, the regional official plan, and the City of Brampton's official plan and secondary plan. Once the analysis and evaluation is complete, staff will return to the Planning and Development Committee with a recommendation report. The recommendation report will address all matters raised by members of the public, external agencies, and other city departments. Anyone that provided their contact information with respect to this application will be advised when the recommendation report will be considered by the committee. Once City Council makes a decision on the application, there is an opportunity to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. Next slide, please. The report associated with tonight's meeting is available online, and the presentation will be made available online shortly. Again, my name is Alex Seppi. My contact information is posted on the screen above. Also on the screen is the contact information for the applicant, Maria Jones of CandiFCon Limited. Thank you. This concludes for my presentation.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do we have any delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Maria Jones is present from CandiFCon, and Maria, you are in the session. You can unmute your mic and turn on your video should you so choose, and you have up to 5 minutes. So Maria, you can unmute your mic. There you
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Alex did actually a very excellent presentation, and he's covered all the points that we would have made. I just want to stress two things. The first is that those part lots along the northern boundary of the site are now owned by TAC Development. And this development just represents the final development parcel for the community that has been approved through Block Plan 51-1. And that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. City Clerk, so there's no further delegations. I do not see any questions of clarification by members of committee. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Singh. Are there anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion carries.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
There was added correspondence 11.5, so if there could just be a motion to receive that correspondence, please.
Okay, yeah, so the motion will be taken as read and will include the additional correspondence as noted by the City Clerk, moved by Councillor Singh to approve the staff report recommendations and the applicant delegation and the correspondence. Is anyone opposed? I see none, so we now adjourn this item and we now move on to public delegations. So our first delegation is from Sylvia Roberts regarding climate migrants, climate refugees, and the official plan. I'll hand it over to you, City Clerk.
Sylvia, we're just bringing you into the session right now. Sylvia, you should be able to unmute your mic and turn on your video if you so choose, and we have your presentation on the screen. You can proceed. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Next slide, please. Canada, as many people in the audience may be aware, is one of the worst emitters in the world, both in terms of our carbon footprint, both on a per capita basis and also on an absolute basis. It's in the top 10 currently, and also of the historic emissions, Canada is even worse than that. Next slide, please. The good news is, in Canada, we're not estimated to get significant climate impacts. In fact, we are expected to be one of the best countries to come out of it the best. For example, the Great Clay Belt in Northern Ontario, which is the size of the Greater Toronto Area, is expected to be much more farmable. And the Windsor to Quebec City corridor, where most Canadians live, have access to reliable fresh water, which is going to become a valuable asset, which countries are going to probably start murdering each other over in the next 20 years. So the situation we have is Canada has put a very large number, has helped contribute to putting a large number of people in danger from its emissions. we're also not doing a very good job of reducing emissions. Normally, in legal proceedings, if you were to engage in actions that you knew were to put people in significant personal danger, you'd have some kind of responsibility to try to get them out of the danger if you didn't really have if you weren't going to suffer significant negative consequences from that. Next slide. So a lot of times climate displacement is talked about as a foreign thing. That's not quite true. Here is from Lyndon, BC, the town that set the Canadian record for heat, and then the next day it set it again, and then the third day it also set it again, and then proceeded to burn down, which is not an auspicious omen, and I'm sure we can all remember Fort McMurray, for example, which was estimated to have been significantly larger due to the effects of climate change. So climate displacement is not just an over there problem, it's an over here problem. And I believe this year we've also been host to a number of First Nations communities fleeing displacement from floods. Next slide. The World Bank has recently released Groundswell Part 2, and the forecast is now approximately 200 million people will become internal climate migrants. It's like, yay, that's in some other country. However, that's assuming the country stays stable. For example, in Syria, the country was not in good shape, and droughts happened, and the country collapsed. Presumably, everyone in the audience remembers what happens in Syria. ISIS, not a good time. Now imagine that happening to many more countries with much larger populations. It might be an internal climate migrant problem in some countries could quickly turn into a global migrant problem. For example, Germany had taken in over 1 million Syrian refugees. Canada to date has not really taken in all that many. We pat ourselves on the back for doing it. We've done almost nothing. Next slide. So what does this have to do with the city of Brampton? So the new OP is supposed to be approved in 2022. We're required to update it for the first time within 10 years, so by 2032. However, planning for climate migrants needs to start happening by 2030, and Canada's probably going to need to start accommodating climate migrants before then. What I'm really trying to get at is before this plan has been reviewed, so in the official plan that is going to be approved, we need to put in a clause requiring the city to put together a plan for how it is going to accommodate, not deal with, accommodate them as part of our moral duty. Because if we don't have a plan put together within 5 years, things may not go very well when we have to start accommodating climate migrants. Eco-fascism has already spawned numerous terrorist incidents. So, for example, everyone probably remembers the Christchurch shooting. That actually had to do with eco-fascism because people are concerned that did the sun go out? Can anyone hear me?
We can. You have
Okay,
30 seconds.
Sorry, yes. So if we fail to plan for climate migrants, we may run into a xenophobia issue with significant negative consequences. Canada's been a significant contributor to climate change. It also has the ability to absorb a significant number of climate migrants if we plan ahead. And so please actually consider doing something in the official plan. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I see no questions, and so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman to receive the delegation. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Thank you very much. And we go now on to our next item, which is item 6.2, and we have numerous delegations, and I'll hand it over to you, City Clerk, to administer those delegations.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are 5 delegations registered for tonight's item on urban community hub design concepts and initiation of pilots at Uptown, Brampton, and Queen Street East Precinct. in accordance with our procedure bylaw, where there is a staff presentation, and there is with this item, the staff presentation will proceed first. So we have Yvonne Yuen from the city's Planning and Development Department, and with Yvonne is John Myers and Ken Greenberg, who are present for this presentation tonight. So Yvonne, you can proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Chair, members of Council, staff, and members of public. I'm Yvonne Young, Manager of Urban Design. Also with me here today is John Myers from HRNA and Ken Greenberg from Greenberg Consultants. We're here to present to you the Urban Community Hub Design Concept and initiation of pilots and seeking endorsement to initiate these pilots. Next slide. So this is a continuation from the council workshop from last June, is to confirming that this initiative aligns with a number of terms of council priority, particularly is about realization of Vision 2040 City by Design, which is about moving Brampton towards a well-designed cities that can use that to change the kind of jobs, making the city more competitive through great, thoughtful design and high quality delivery. And the reason why urban design is taking this terms of council priority is because we are using the design problem solving to help different departments and agencies to work together on a combined solution that is much bigger than its individual parts. Next slide. So this initiative also confirming that is meeting the due diligence work. So we have been collaborating with Peel Region Social Services, Public Health, the school board, and also the province, and looking at how this initiative has aligned with a number of goals from public health and also a lot of planning initiative. Next slide. So since the council workshop in June 2020, we have furthered the due diligence work, particularly focusing on Uptown Hub, and using that to fully understand what is the policy levers and partnership. So that is through the work with University of Toronto School of Cities. We have also studied the economic and fiscal impact and finding a creative way to create new value through an accelerated model that we are going to talk a little bit further. We have also engaged Canadian Urban Institute, particularly understanding the area around Uptown, to understand what is the local community needs and business needs, and the idea to use this to demonstrate a practical solution to move the city towards achieving these global sustainable development goals. Next slide. So building upon the Mount Pleasant model, which is primarily focusing on a co-location of library, elementary school, and recreation and daycare, we expanded this model and we're adding in health component, social, arts and culture, technology, and green ecology. And the result is a combine of indoor shared spaces, which is shown on the image on the right, and also an outdoor shared spaces, which is shown on the image on the left. And the idea is to have a combined model through a facilities that is owned by the city, including the land that is surrounding it, and also the facility itself, so that it can provide for the flexibility for growth and change of program through the democratic changes. Next slide. So this model is also built on a 24 hours model, primarily using that to serve the need of the nighttime population, and also to adapt to some of the recent needs, particularly from the new immigrant population, looking at opportunity to support local entrepreneurship. Next slide. So through the last 6 months, we have been collaborating with different departments and agencies, including the school board educator, and drawing from the experience and experimenting a model, looking at how this project is not just about designing physical spaces that is adjacent to each other, but it's more about providing an integrated model to looking at education very differently. So this is a very exciting way of providing the integrated programs And through that, it provides for practical training opportunities, not just for the elementary school student, but also potentially for the future generation of teachers. And also providing opportunities for the community to be involved as the program is happening within the hub. And the idea is to use this as an opportunity to grow the local leadership, both from the teachers, the parents, the local businesses, but also using that to show a very healthy model. So that is focusing on walk to school and bike to school. So what is unique about this hub design is that you don't see any parking lots surrounding the hub, but instead is that we have been working very closely with RealCam through the Shoppers World development and very intentional about the street design, focusing on how we can create the new kinds of walk to and bike to facilities in the heart of the neighborhood so that kids as young as 6 years old or 12 years old, they will be able to walk to school safely during all seasons. Next slide. So this is showing the two locations of the pilot that we have in mind. The one that we have been developed further in terms of economic and fiscal impact and also other elements is the Uptown Hub. And that is shown on the image on the left. What is shown on the screen is the conceptual location of the hub, located right in the heart of the Uptown neighborhood. So it's also contiguous with the Kennedy Park. The idea is to expand this overall campus to serve the heart of the neighborhood within the 15-minute walkable distance. What is shown on the right side is the conceptual location of the hub within the Queen Street East precinct. So the Queen Street East preliminary precinct plan was endorsed by council in 2020. And now this is going through the policy planning process and looking at the community permit system. And the idea is that through that process, we further confirm and define the delivery for the Queen Street hub. Next slide. So this is the same prototype, design prototype that we have introduced at a June 2020 council workshop, but particularly because of COVID, we have drawn additional design thinking to how we can design the facilities to prioritize access to daylight, access to airflow, access to green technology, and also healthy food. So some of the thoughtful design in here is really thinking about how we can use it to demonstrate the next generation of sustainable and resilient model to help the city to be more competitive and accelerate the recovery from COVID. Next slide. So this is the conceptual prototype of the Queen's Hub. And it's primarily having two schools mixed together, and other programming is also similar with the Uptown Hub. Next slide. So now I'm going to turn it to John Myers from HRNA to explain their model.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, everybody?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you, everybody, for allowing us to make this presentation. Our methodology here to understand the fiscal and economic impact of the proposal for a hub rests on understanding, on the one hand, a base case, which is really status quo, and then an impact case in which Brampton were to build and operate a community hub, and in essence become a driver of its own future. In the base case, we spent a great deal of time with both school board and provincial and regional officials to understand that in the base case, I think there is a very significant amount of development planned in the Shoppers World area, but that under base case conditions, the delivery of public services lags very significantly behind the arrival of new population. So there is a very significant gap of unmet population need, service need from that new population. Therefore, we believe those new developments are unlikely to meet local inclusion and diversity visions that have been designed into these plans from the beginning. They do also reinforce car dependence because new residents are further from schools and other necessary services. They inhibit service efficiency and innovation. As Yvonne has described, there's already been a great deal of conversation about service integration, service efficiency with the model of the hub. And there is little or no local control over those services to align the services to local needs, either in time or in terms of specific levels of services at any given moment in time. On the other hand, under the impact case, there are increased tax revenues and lower capital costs for basic public services. And I will underscore, we investigated in this instance only property tax revenues. There are likely other revenues as well. We also believe that the presence of the hub supports the newly developed transit, improves access to community facilities for both future residents and current residents. It integrates education along with other services, as Yvonne was describing. It creates new business and job opportunities and enhances overall growth goals, inclusive growth goals for the city. Next slide, please. Specifically looking at the economic components of these for a second, we believe that by accelerating the delivery of the hub, as opposed to, again, the status quo of ad hoc service delivery, the local government will save between $30 and $90 million in avoided land cost and construction cost escalation. We also believe, based on proximity to the school within the hub, as property is developed within the 15-minute walk radius, there will be somewhere around a 4.5% increase in property values and therefore property taxes associated with the presence of the school facility. That's about $1.8 million a year by 2035, incrementally to local government. And we also believe that this supports the city's goals of providing larger residential units, because again, once the facility is in place in phase one, future development is able to build with the surety of schools and other local services, and demand is able to take that into account. And related to that, we believe that this also, again, enhances the city's efforts to grow in an inclusive and sustainable way. Next slide, please. And the last piece of this, but by no means any less important than any of the others, we do believe that this is a sustainable and scalable model. As Yvonne was indicating, there are already 2 sites identified, and we suspect many others, both within Brampton and frankly within the region and around North America. So this is a model that we believe is sustainable. It provides really a cutting edge opportunity to integrate services in a way that is both more efficient financially and more effective in terms of service delivery. It provides an opportunity for long-term tenancy that protects the government and service providers from future rent increases, because the government serving as landlord here allows for the ability to align the services directly with local needs. And as those needs evolve over time, the services can evolve as well in a relatively efficient and painless way. We also think it therefore allows all levels of government, city, regional, provincial, and school board, to be able to meet their service objectives in a way that adds value to local community development. Thank you again.
Next slide. Now we're going to turn it to Ken.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you, Yvonne. This three-dimensional model really paints a picture for you of where the hub sits in the middle of an emerging 15-minute neighborhood. This is something that everyone is aspiring to now, and you are really achieving it. The combination of the hub, which you see in the light blue in the expanded kind of park in the middle of the image, and the LRT coming up here, Ontario, have proven to be an irresistible magnet for developers. In fact, 8 developers have come forward almost simultaneously to build in this vicinity to create the neighborhood that you see here. And it will include a local main street, all of the services and amenities in the hub that Yvonne has described, access to transit, and it will also serve, as you can see, the surrounding single-family neighborhoods. So within that 400-meter, 800-meter radius, the kids who live in those neighborhoods, as well as in the existing CANF rental buildings and condominiums, will be able to walk and bike to school. Next. So there is actually a vibrant community here socially. This is not tabula rasa. And we brought in the Canadian Urban Institute, which has done work across Canada on bringing back main streets, on supporting local communities. I believe you have a report that they have prepared. But one of the really critical ideas is the existing Shoppers World currently functions as a kind of community hub with small businesses, some social services, and so on. And the idea is to make sure that those social and economic aspects of the existing community are built into the new emerging neighborhoods. So, for example, RioCan is quite interested working with the city and making sure that some of those really successful small independent businesses will have an opportunity to relocate in the new Main Street, which they are creating in the middle of the neighborhood. That a variety of things serving that local community from a social standpoint will be incorporated as well. Next. And finally, this is just an indication of the momentum that is building around this idea. As Yvonne indicated, there's been extremely broad consultation with all of the parties required to make this a success. In the middle, just about a year ago in October, there was a major workshop, which I believe many of you, if not all of you, participated in and saw the response to this concept, which has proven to be extremely popular and is really exciting a lot of people, not only in Brampton, but around the region, because you are really functioning as trailblazers, doing something that many people have wanted to achieve. Next.
You can. So this initiative has really demonstrated City Council leadership in a very progressive vision, making this idea as a terms of council priority. And further to the council workshop, staff has taken the direction working on putting this as part of the narrative in the AMO booklet. And further to that, we have also have opportunity to present at the ADM table at the province to use this to show this innovative opportunity for anchor tenancy. And the idea is to, coming from the local residents and local business perspective, thinking about how we can orchestrate the best predictable environment to help the growth to happen in a high quality way. So tonight we are seeking a council endorsement of the design concept, particularly focusing on the initiation of the partnership arrangement with school boards and other parties through the MOU. And the idea is to plan this as part of a capital project. We're focusing on delivering the physical hub by 2027. So that's aligned with the overall Shoppers World redevelopment. And also on top of that, the other 7 to 8 developers that is now going through active development application, all surrounding the Uptown area. And for the Queen Street area, it will be going through the development permit system process and using that to initiate the pilot later on. Next slide. So this is primarily our goal to achieve tonight. We would like to seek council endorsement of the item that we talked about. And this concludes our presentation. Next slide. Thank you. So if there is any questions, feel free to reach out to myself and also members of my team within the department in terms of this innovative initiative. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Chair, we can proceed with the delegations unless you wish to take questions now, but normally we would deal with delegations first and then there may be questions after the delegations.
No, we'll proceed with the delegations. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. So we have 5 delegations this evening. The first is Dr. Nicholas Shepherd-Jones, Public Health and Preventative Medicine Resident, Region of Peel. Dr. Shepherd-Jones, you are in the session. We'll just bring up your presentation slides momentarily, and then you'll have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening to all. My name is Dr. Nicholas Shepherd-Jones, and I'm grateful to be speaking to you tonight on behalf of Peel Public Health about the health benefits we anticipate from the City of Brampton's Urban Community Hub's integrated programming and pilot hub design. Note that Peel Public Health's Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Lawrence Lowe, is among us to help field any questions. Next slide, please. In Peel, as we know, there are many sprawling neighborhoods which have been designed around automobiles. The dominance of cars can have direct negative impacts on human health in the forms of physical injury, chronic disease, and decreased mental health and well-being. But fortunately, the concept plans for the community hub outline a 20-minute walking neighborhood, which is compact, pedestrian-friendly, transit-supportive, and contains a mix of uses that support daily living. The programming and the implementation of this plan align with several key priorities listed in the Peel Public Health Strategic Plan. These include healthy, active living, mental health and well-being, and climate change. On the mental health and well-being front, it is reasonable to expect that the programming and plan facilities will help build social networks, social supports, school and work environments that are interconnected, which together will create a sense of social connectedness and enable physical activity. And these are two crucial elements of mental health and general health. The plan also aligns with the concept of age-friendly communities. The integrated programming and 24-hour facility provide connectivity to local and regional services with a mix of amenity supports for residents of varying demographics. And there are plans for gathering spaces for families and youth, as well as plans for healthy living and distinct communities for seniors. We've also noted the implications for healthy nutrition. A food hub is planned in the main facility, along with the potential for urban agriculture in the community hub. And these will offer an accessible, healthy food environment for residents and also provide further opportunity for social interaction and community engagement. Next slide, please. So on average, there are 1,000 injuries, including 9 fatal collisions that occur on regional roads in Peel annually. More than 71% of collisions occur at intersections, which is why injury prevention and traffic safety are important in our focus on pedestrian health and well-being in Peel. Peel Public Health has been working closely with the Region of Peel's Public Works to implement the Vision Zero Road Safety Strategic Plan in collaboration with local and provincial government and various other agencies. And the vision of this work is to reduce to zero the number of collisions on regional roads, which result in injury or death. This aim is aligned with the region's strategic plan by promoting a community that supports safe walkability, healthy living, and a variety of modes of transportation. And from our perspective, the community hub concept plan presents a pedestrian-focused community which is directly aligned with the work being undertaken in the context of Vision Zero. Next slide, please. So half of Peel's population lives within 300 meters of the highway or a major road, and we know that exposure to traffic-related pollution is particularly elevated within a 500-meter radius of such roads. This means that many of our residents are at risk for the health impacts of air pollution, which can be significant. For instance, cardiovascular disease and respiratory issues, which are widespread and cause significant emergency department use and hospitalizations, are worsened by poor air quality. The design and framework for the Brampton pilot hubs shift the focus from developing highways and from an over-reliance on vehicles to creating a vision for transit-oriented communities where active transportation is safe and incentivized through, for example, incorporating secure bicycle parking in the streetscape as depicted in the image to the right. And all of these will work collectively to improve air quality, increase physical activity and overall health, and ultimately create resilience in the face of climate change through adaptation and mitigation. Next slide, please. Finally, plans for the two hubs are aligned with the key concept of walkability. Rates of obesity and chronic disease across Canada are alarmingly high, and unfortunately, the region of Peel is no exception. We know that areas where urban design and land use planning facilitate walking, cycling, and transit use are associated with an increase in active transportation and overall physical activity levels. The walk to one-shop vision of the framework aligns with elements of a walkable neighborhood, including reasonable proximity to destinations, a variety of shops, services, parks, and workplaces, and availability of continuous pedestrian infrastructure. Next slide, please. So Peel Public Health is supportive of the design and implementation framework for the City of Brampton's Urban Community Hub because it is transit-oriented, community-centered, and pedestrian-friendly. and will foreseeably improve community safety, prevent injuries, and enhance overall wellness. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the chair for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Shepherd-Jones. The next delegation is Todd Kyle, Chief Executive Officer, and John Simone, Director, Business Development and Operations from the Brampton Library. Welcome, Todd and John. You have up to 5 minutes, and we'll bring your presentation up.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Kyle. I'm the CEO of Brampton Library, joined by John Simone, our Director of Business Development and Operations. The library has been working very closely with city staff, with Yvonne and her team, on the design concepts for the urban community hubs. We felt it was important to come forward tonight to wholeheartedly endorse the proposal, because quite simply we feel that it aligns perfectly with the library's strategic, facility, and financial plans. Next slide, please. It is very much in alignment with the library's mission, which is to create a world-class destination that creates opportunities for everyone to discover their full potential through literacy, learning, and building community. Next slide. So libraries, we feel, are an essential part of urban community hubs. In fact, as has already been mentioned, the library and the city have already experimented with this model at the Mount Pleasant Village project, where a library branch is embedded in a school and recreation space. Public libraries view themselves as community hubs to begin with, a central access point to a range of programs and services designed to meet the needs of the community and play a significant role in meeting all sorts of needs for all age groups. And so we'd be very happy to be part of a broader community hubs design. Next slide, please. Brampton Library branches offer multiple community benefits. Building on these would serve the needs of the community hub well, and you can see a list here of some of the amenities and benefits that the libraries provide. In particular, as is highlighted at the bottom, the urban community hubs concept will provide for the potential opportunities for shared space for community programming and other uses that could be accessed on a 24/7 basis. Next slide. So what's really important is that the strategic priorities of both the library and City of Brampton Council are in complete alignment as they pertain to urban community hubs. So for example, the library's primary strategic goal is to be a strong community presence, which we feel is very much in alignment with the idea of a 20-minute walkable neighborhood and a service hub. And the Council's priority, which is strongly aligned, is to be a healthy and safe city, and a community hub with a library as a presence would play a role in reducing social isolation and providing barrier-free public spaces. Next slide, please. And so these are the rest of the library's strategic goals and term of council priorities, which are quite in alignment. Next slide. So what's really important, and this is the other part of the equation, is that the library is working on plans for future expansion. We've just completed the draft of a facilities master plan, which is going to public consultation shortly. This plan will strongly rely on urban community hubs as opportunities for new library branches. Next slide, please. So two of the service gaps that the draft facilities master plan has identified are shown here on this map. They do coincide with the planned Uptown Hub and Queens Hub, and they call basically for small, what is being referred to as neighborhood library branches in those locations. As well, at the Uptown Hub, we've already heard about the pilot that is being planned. The library has already begun planning its participation in that pilot project by providing an interim library presence to help build future capacity for services, and this has been incorporated into our long-range budget plan starting in 2023. Next slide, please. As well, the draft facilities master plan indicates that its guiding principles are completely in alignment with existing City of Brampton plans. So it relies heavily on the Brampton 2040 vision, the concept of urban community hubs, the concept of transit and bike-friendly civic facilities, and believes that it is important to support neighborhoods by acting or being part of community hubs, by being co-located with other community amenities, and of course, by being leaders in sustainability for many of the reasons that have already been summarized tonight. Next slide, please. And lastly, Any facility expansion, of course, raises questions about financial capacity, and the one thing that, and it's already been described tonight, that is attractive about the the Urban Community Hubs plan is the accelerated delivery model. Next slide, please. So the accelerated delivery model is a solution to the rapid expansion that the library needs and that is needed for civic facilities and civic services because it helps build community and financial viability. Ultimately, the library wants to be integrated into a one-roof, community-connected location that makes Brampton better and helps fulfill the Brampton 2040 vision. Next slide. So thank you very much. Again, to reiterate, the library's strategic focus, its facility expansion plans, and its financial strategy are in complete alignment with the proposed Urban Community Hubs plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd and John. The next delegation is Mary Rowe, President and Chief Executive Officer, the Canadian Urban Institute. Mary, we will bring your slide deck up momentarily, and you have up to 5 minutes. Please proceed.
Hi, I'm delighted to be with you. I'm in Victoria today, actually, which is the home of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and the Songhees First Nations. And we're here. I'm the lead of the Canadian Urban Institute. I appreciate being invited here by Yvonne and Bob and my colleagues Ken and others who have been participating in this really ambitious project. The reason that we wanted to work with you and we're keen to hear about the Brampton experience is because we have been working on main streets, as you can see from the first slide. You can advance it, thank you. I'm pleased that the council members are here and that your committee is focusing on what you're focused on. If you can go to the next slide, then I'm going to tell you a little bit about our work. It's been on how we bring back main streets. So since COVID, you know, main streets were struggling before COVID, but during COVID, they became intensely challenged. And so we started work across the country and felt that it's really important that we learn from communities like Brampton. I feel like you guys have a lot to teach the rest of the country. And so we've doubled down, focused on this Main Street piece. And here, sure enough, your project is looking at how do you strengthen a Main Street. All the values that you see here, supporting local economic recovery. And we have a national narrative about how we're going to recover from the ground up. So that's part of what CUI does, is build connective tissue from community to community and city to city, hence us being in Victoria. And in many ways, the street is the connective tissue in every community. Next slide, please. So in the immediate term, you know, you look at the way small businesses were hit hard during COVID, and they're going to be the really crucial components, not only to business recovery, but to neighborhood recovery and place-based recovery, which I'm so appreciative that Brampton is being brave about. So carry on to the next slide, and you'll see that when we were putting the project together, we started to focus on all the ways in which economic, social, and cultural things are anchored in main streets, of which you're lucky that you have a really vibrant one still downtown. And then the question would be, how do you actually connect it with Uptown? So we, as I said, did bring back Main Street, and now many of you will know we're also now, effective a month ago, running something in Southern Ontario, a pilot called My Main Street, which is all about how do we actually surface economic development, support it, and all the other things that come along with it, which you are coming to terms with in this piece. So our piece on our contribution to this work was to actually look, you can go to the next slide, to look at how Uptown Brampton is actually informing the kind of connective tissue with downtown Brampton. So you can carry on, please, and the next slide. We had a study area. Important thing in demographics you guys already know, but which we're sharing across the country to illustrate why Brampton is so pivotally important as an anchor city as part of a larger region. Extraordinary diversity, as you know, a lot of visible minority and South Asian community there and Black residents. Next slide, please. So diversity being such an important part of how Brampton has grown. And then the interesting thing about Uptown Brampton is the dynamism of the small independent business sector. Average employees, the percentage of the businesses that are actually independently owned. This is like a little microcosm of what we see in cities and communities across the country. Predominance of retail. And the opportunity for you to kind of double down and connect with the traditional urban form that was there, and also what's evolved over the last several decades. Next slide, please. I appreciate Ken talking about the 15-minute city. Lots of debate about this, but what we're really talking about is people having access to the services and the amenities and the economic opportunity that these kinds of interventions and decisions you guys are making, you folks are making, with pairing the idea of a community hub and co-location of services and amenities with this vibrant main street. Next slide, please. So this is a kind of merging of social and environmental and economic considerations. Again, why it's important that the modeling that you're doing is important to cities across the country, because you're showing how it can actually tangibly be done, that you can reach economic and social and environmental objectives with coordinated strategies. Next slide, please. Social infrastructure is the glue that does that. So in our report, which we called Unboxing Uptown, which we appreciate again, there are many, many uptowns across the country. This is a typology that you see again and again and again. In Victoria, in the Lower South Island here, I see it all the time. The idea, our recommendations were, draw on the character that you already have as a food destination. Support this complete neighborhood by introducing other kinds of diverse uses, different kinds of spaces, and after, post and during COVID, we've got a chance to do that. There's a whole bunch of things that are in transition, and how do we insert and actually occupy these spaces in the kinds of creative, holistic ways? Just as the previous presenter was talking about the library, there are other community amenities that can be done. How are you going to do your public space plan? Very important. And the business opportunity being along at the same time. And then we also know, and we heard loud and clear, that opportunities for young people are critical as you continue in your investment. Next slide, please. So I think the important thing here for me to just remind you is that you have a moment here to really support through both a linear infrastructure investment and the community hub to aggregate things. You have an opportunity to actually create a model for us that we will talk about across the country through our Bring Back Main Street and My Main Street piece. And that this kind of resilient, much more resilient, coordinated investment and in urban form with economic, social, and environmental outcomes is really the moment we have after COVID to try to double down on that. You know, we watched with great interest and empathy as Brampton was challenged by a variety of things through COVID. And I think that as we come out of that, we can use those lessons as a moment to really make the case that you're making through this study for what a resilient and kind of more sustainable mixed-use development can look like. So I wish you luck with this, and we've been very, very pleased to work alongside with you and look forward to continuing to do that and share that narrative across the country. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mary. The next delegation is Daryl Gray, Director, Education and Training, Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. Daryl, we're just going to bring your presentation up, and you can unmute your mic, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Daryl Graham, the Director of Education and Training here at TRCA, and here to provide our endorsement and support for the hub model in Brampton. Next slide. Conservation authorities, as many of you well know, have been around for generations. 1946 is when the first act was established, enabling CAs to develop across Ontario. Our jurisdiction extends from Mississauga in the west out to Ajax Meath, follows the Moraine across to Caledon, and then back down through Brampton. Brampton is obviously an important part of our work as a conservation authority. Next slide. And as a result of that, we have a number of different partnerships that we undertake with the city of Brampton. And here's a short list. By no means is this comprehensive. There's a number of others related from a planning perspective and community development perspective that our planning and engineering staff work with city staff on regularly. Some of these are more focused primarily on the community development aspects of our work, which falls largely within my group. Next slide. So some of the areas where we saw alignment between the community hub model in Brampton are some of our programs specifically related to the library and education hub. So we have a nature school that we recently launched at Clareville Conservation Area, our outreach programs for Watershed on Wheels, and our work delivering the Peel Eco Skills program with support from the region of Peel, particularly aligns with the library and education hub. From an arts, culture, and design hub perspective, we have a community learning program and team that goes out into the community on a daily basis and engages residents in watershed learning and climate change activities that help turn the curve on climate change within our communities on the ground. On the technology and innovation hub, and I'll get into some of these in a little more detail in subsequent slides. Some of the areas where we see some intersection is our work in the newcomer populations, where we're working with them on a bridge training program and helping them find their pathway to employment within our watersheds, and that's engaging highly skilled professionals that have recently landed in Canada in finding their employment in their chosen fields, whether they be geoscience, environmental engineering, planning, etc. As well as Girls Can Too, which is a program that started in Caledon but now has rolled out to other parts of our watersheds. We're helping young women that are interested in the skilled trades gain experience in the field and start to explore what that may mean to them as a career choice. And then on the Green Ecology Hub, we have a strong urban agriculture program across TRCA where we've got a number of urban farms where we're supporting that. and looking for pathways to improved food security and food farming within those particular green spaces. And then more specifically, Sustainable Technology Evaluation Program and our Sustainable Neighborhoods programs are working already with you on the ground in Brampton. Next slide. So getting into some of those things in particular, we think act as a bit of a spoke from the hub at downtown Brampton. The Nature School at Clairville, this was the TDSB center that closed a couple of years ago. We've reopened that as a nature school that also includes camps and programming and education activities for schools in the neighborhoods. We see this as an important part of our growth as an organization and responding to the needs of our community on the ground and creating new spaces for people to come and activate important green spaces within our watersheds, Clairville being obviously a very important one to us. Next slide. The Sustainable Neighborhood Retrofit Action Plan. This is one that's already underway within Bramalea and has been working there for a number of years, focused on the FK and sorry, I forget the third one, neighborhoods of Bramalea adjacent to the city center. So it's one in particular where the SNAP program is seen as a catalyst for us to bring together a number of different partners and stakeholders to find new pathways to redevelopment of those particular neighborhoods that have a sustainability focus. And at the fore of that is engaging communities from the outset to make sure that their voice is heard in defining what that looks like. And you'll see here a list of things that came through those very detailed community consultations, which were developed and delivered in partnership with our municipal partners as it relates to the SNAP neighborhoods in Bramalea. Obviously, proximity is a huge part of our interest in the hub as for the Bramalea SNAP neighborhood. Next slide. Community learning. In 2014, our board endorsed a new approach to how we deliver programs in our communities rather than trying to pull people to specific developed events or out to the green spaces that we manage. The rationale at the time was to go to where people are. So the community learning engagement model really focused our efforts within the urban environment to try and engage residents in their neighborhoods and in their communities. So obviously a hub model for us gives us an opportunity to come to where you are and where your residents are and engage them in environmental activities that are relevant to them and very much relevant to the space that we're operating in. Next slide. And then in terms of urban agriculture, I touched a little bit on this. We see an opportunity through the urban hub model to engage residents in urban agriculture and small scale farming, utilizing the space not only there, but also in the communities around it, and making those connections to places like the McLean Farm at Clairville or the Living Farm at Courtright to bring produce to market, create opportunities for revenue streams, and support the overall sort of design, development, and implementation of this within the urban hub model. Next slide. And that wraps up my presentation. Again, we support this and we look forward to continuing to work with city staff on this and you as committee and council members as this develops in the near future. Any questions? I'm happy to entertain them. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Our last delegation is Sylvia Roberts, Brampton resident. Sylvia, you are in the session. You can unmute your mic and we have your presentation up on the screen. Please proceed.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. Overall, I actually really like the community hub proposal. I think the one at Uptown actually is in a great location. For the Queen Street East Community Hub, I agree with the general concept. However, the specific site that they're proposing at the southwest corner of Queen and Rutherford Road does not make sense. Next slide. So for a bit of context, it is in a major transit station area, which the region of Peel has already delineated. And this node actually includes significantly more area than the Queen's Corridor planning proposes. Next slide. So one of the major differences compared to how the city is planning at the Queen Street Corridor is this MTSA actually includes a substantial amount of residential land, which if you read the provincial government's response to the region of Peel showing the MTSAs, is that the residential areas, the low-rise residential areas within the delineated MTSAs should in fact also prepare for intensification. Queen Street is a major truck route in the city of Brampton. If you want to remove the amount of truck route on Queen Street, you can. However, that means it's going to be directed to the Clark 410 access south of the site, and Clark the site was proposed to basically be between two major truck routes. The region appeal talked about air pollution. Well, we're going to be planning for this to be in an incredibly bad location for air pollution. Additionally, with the amount of traffic along Queen Street, because this incorporates elementary schools in the plan. I don't know about you, but who thinks 7-year-olds walking across Queen Street is a good idea? By situating it north of Queen Street at the northwest corner, they won't have to cross Queen Street. Rutherford Road already has bike lanes. The site will be much more accessible for pedestrians and cyclists. Additionally, if cyclists are taking the Vauden overpass, they won't have to deal with cars turning onto the 410 because there's no interchanges there. Additionally, the city's plan for high-rise residential in the commercial area here doesn't quite make sense because high-rises actually cost so much per square foot that you're really making the assumption that a family would rather have a 3-bedroom apartment instead of a 4-bedroom townhouse, which would be cheaper and have its own actual backyard, not potentially some balcony. It just doesn't make financial sense. The family unit should be accommodated north of it, and as such, because there are elementary schools located in the buildings, the elementary school should also be located closer to the families so small children are not having to cross busy routes. Thank you. That's my slide. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Sylvia. Mr. Chair, that concludes all the delegations. We also have correspondence 11.4 from Michelle McCollum, Associate Vice President, Sheridan College, for consideration with this item.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. And we do now, are there any questions of the delegations? I see none, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to receive the delegations. Anyone opposed? Oh, delegations and the correspondence. Does anyone oppose? I see none, so the motion carries. And at this time, committee, we will bring report, I believe it's item
7.2.
7.2. Are there any questions regarding the report? Okay, I see none, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman, and I'll take it as read. Anyone opposed? I see none, and we will now proceed. Thank you. So that's, and City Clerk, you could just advise, we've already received the delegations, but we need a motion, the presentation. This motion now includes a presentation, staff report, that the Urban Hub Design, item 2, item 3, item 4, and item 5. Okay, that's the one in item 6. Plus the correspondence again?
Yes, that is everything for this item.
Yeah, okay. And again, just my apologies, committee. So the motion is moved by Councillor Bowen. Is anyone opposed? I see none. Thank you very much. And we will, the motion carries. So now we move on now to our next delegation. And from Henry Verser-Turin, Parade Commander in Government and Community Liaison, Royal Canadian Legion, and I'll hand it over to our City Clerk.
Henry, you are in the session now. Welcome. And we're just going to bring your picture up in a moment, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. So you can unmute your mic.
Thank you. I believe I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, thank you very much, committee, for allowing me to appear. A special thanks to Mr. Peter Fay, because when I filed the delegation request, not knowing what I was doing, I filed it to Committee of Council. He guided me to here and got me on this agenda, and I appreciate that. I don't have a large PowerPoint presentation for you. I've got one slide. One slide. A picture's worth 1,000 words. We are talking about a Remembrance Day Lawn Sign. This is a national program that's being introduced this year by our Dominion Command in Ottawa of the Royal Canadian Legion. Last year, they tried a pilot project in a couple of different areas of the country, one of them being up near Campbellford, Ontario. Even from that, we got requests from Brampton residents who became aware of it and wanted to have this. So we have these signs now, and I made some inquiries to Council Bowman's office about whether or not these could be placed on city-owned properties. And we got a really good response back from the Chief Administrative Officer, but in that response also indicated that we can't put these on public lawns. We can't, residents can't buy them, and local businesses can't buy them because it's against the bylaw. So I'm here tonight to talk to you about amending the bylaw to allow these signs to go forward. The message is very simple. We will remember them, and on the bottom left-hand corner is the word "thank you," and of course the poppy. The poppy celebrates its 100th anniversary of being adopted as a symbol of remembrance in Canada. There's a special connection for the poppy to Brampton, and I'll explain that in a minute. But once we adopted it, it went internationally and is now being used by all of the countries of the British Commonwealth. The connection to Brampton is that the poppy was adopted by the Great War Veterans Association. That was the association prior to the formation of the Legion. The Dominion president, or the national president at that time, was Major William Dwight Sharp, a Bramptonian. Our branch is named after him. We have a park named after him, a street named after him. He was a town councillor, a doctor, a member of the Lower Scots, a World War I veteran. So it was under his jurisdiction and under his command that the poppy became the symbol, and it's now 100 years old. My request is very simple. We need to say thank you to our veterans, particularly this year, because they're going through difficult times in terms of isolation because of COVID. We're also going through, and I'm talking about residents in this community, veterans in this community. I'm talking about veterans in this community who have been triggered with their PTSD with respect to the events in Afghanistan lately. Because because of their service in Afghanistan, they have an ongoing, long-term suffering because of that. We need to gather as a community and say thank you to them. I think they really need it. This will be an annual project going forward, so these signs will be available. I want to actually refer back to an earlier delegation. Ms. Mary Rowe of the Canadian Urban Institute said, Brampton has a lot to teach the rest of this country. I absolutely agree with her, and if I want to take, and I'd like to take that quote out of her context and put it in the context of this presentation, and simply say, we're amazing in Brampton in terms of how we recognize veterans. It's not a one-day-a-year thing; it's an all-year-round thing. We have banners that most communities are starting now to adopt based on our model. We are the only municipality in Ontario that has a year-round Brampton Veterans Pass, where veterans can ride free on Brampton Transit every day of the year. All the other municipalities allow them to ride free one day a year on Remembrance Day. We don't do that. We have a lot to teach the rest of the country. What I don't want to happen is that these signs will be available in every community around us, but not available in Brampton to the general public. So my request is that the bylaw sign be amended to allow this sign to be used by the public. Time, of course, is of the essence. The poppy campaign kicks off on October 29th. I'm not sure we can get this all done by then, but we may be able to get it done by November 3rd. That will take a lot of coordination with the staff to get a report in to council as soon as possible, etc. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will go to Councillor Willens.
Thank you, Hank, for bringing this forward. It's I was thinking of actually thinking of you the other day. I was driving home from the Ottawa Valley, and I actually saw some of these signs in through Marmora and Havelock, and a couple other small communities up that way, and I did see banners on their posts as well, and it reminded me of you again, because that's the first time I'd seen those banners that we did here in Brampton recognizing the veterans. So I'm glad you brought this. I'm glad I saw it in the agenda earlier, and I'm glad you brought it forward, and I have no issue. I see Councillor Bowman's on the board with the motion, so I just wanted to thank you for bringing it forward, Hank, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor Willens. I appreciate it. There are other communities who are looking into banners and how to do them, and they're in communication with us. So we started a trend there, definitely.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Hi, Henry. Good to see you. Thanks so much for bringing this. I love this idea. I love signs. And I think it's great that we have give people the opportunity to be able to express their appreciation. We know that the city has allowed the Keep Christ in Christmas and signs during the month of December, and I think this is great to allow residents to be able to show their appreciation for the sacrifice our veterans have made to our country. And I really do appreciate you bringing in the narrative around our veterans who fought in wars outside of World War I and World War II, and thinking about our veterans in Nam, veterans in, in Iran, and so on and so forth. So I think this is really great. I am in full support, and I look forward to the motion that Councillor Bowman will bring forward. Just a question: is there a certain time frame that you are seeking, or are you just looking to allow this for the November 11th? Is there a time frame that you're looking for?
There's definitely a time frame. This would be coordinated with the annual Poppy campaign, which runs on October 29th to November the 11th. That's the time frame we would like to see the signs up.
Wonderful. I think this would be great. It's such a great show of appreciation. Thanks so much, Henry, for coming in and presenting this. And again, I look forward to Councillor Bowman's motion.
Thank you, as always, Councillor Williams.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming in, Hank. This is a fantastic idea. I am overjoyed that you reached out to me to look into this for you and to be any part of this. You are certainly the face of the Legion and of veterans in this community, whether you're barking out marching orders or whether you're coming in and gently delegating to council. So there is a motion that's being displayed by Mr. Fay, and I will read it. Whereas citizen engagement and participation in annual holidays and events is integral to fostering community spirit and recognition of annual celebrations, events, and or ceremonies, and whereas council considers it to be appropriate and desirable to exempt lawn signs on residential properties that promote federally, provincially, or municipally recognized, sponsored, or sanctioned holidays and events from the requirements and restrictions of signed bylaw 399/2002 as amended. Therefore, council directs that staff prepare an amendment to sign bylaw 399/2002 as amended to exempt residential line signs that are displayed for the purposes of holiday and event recognition from requirements of the bylaw, including appropriate size, location requirements, and establishing a time frame for display and removal relative to the date of the event or holiday. And I would, hope this passes unanimously. And we're looking forward to displaying these signs as quickly as we can get them out, Hank. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to speak to the motion. Before I do, though, thanks, Henry, for coming. Fully support anything that's you're trying to put forward for our vets, and you're absolutely right. Now more than ever do they need our support and our fundraising and donations also, because it goes a long way, and I know that helps. Mr. Chair, I would like to speak to the motion. The delegation hasn't been received yet.
Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Palacio to receive the delegation. Is there anyone opposed? I see none, so we have received delegation, and I'll hand it over to you, Councillor Palacio, to deal with the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to staff. Unless Councillor Bowman would like to elaborate, I'm not sure if he talked to staff about the motion and what actually it means for us if we're proposing holidays, event recognition. I'm trying to kind of see into the future to say, you know, how many holidays are celebrated in the city of Brampton, how many events are in the city of Brampton, what does this actually mean? That is one question. My other question would be, I see a lot of times that, you know, when people go in and do a driveway, or if they get their windows done in the house, or if I even saw a cleaning service post a sign on somebody's lawn after they went in and did the service. And it's typically there for a few days or maybe even a week. I wonder about those signs, if they're allowed. And then also real estate signs. Are real estate signs exempt from the bylaw currently?
Thank you. It's Elizabeth Corozal. I'll respond, Councillor Pleshy, in order. So real estate signs, through you, Mr. Chair, are exempt from the bylaw. Obviously, there are some limitations on where they can be placed, and again, the duration of where they can be located, or sorry, for how long they can be located on the property, particularly after the house has been sold. So those are exempt. There are other exemptions for what you'll see usually on the weekends for the open house signs as well for real estate signage. In terms of the signs that you see for, as you say, for ongoing activities at the property, whether it's, you know, the lawn signs that your contractor or your window installer is going to place there, technically those are not permitted signs under the terms of the sign bylaw. They would be advertising signs. Sometimes they will be scooped up by bylaw enforcement if there's a complaint. As you know, many times they're only there for a limited duration, so they don't necessarily come to the attention of bylaw enforcement, but no, otherwise they would not be permitted signage. What we've done and in trying to craft a motion that's a little more broadly based, broader based than simply looking at the Remembrance Day signs, recognizing that there are a number of important holidays and recognition moments throughout the calendar year, and noting that Council also just recently amended the sign bylaw to allow for the Halloween treat accessibility signs that you might see now displayed prior to Halloween this year. Staff are considering a lot of amendments to the sign bylaw of this nature that would, you know, perhaps be open to interpretation, but in this regard, we were trying to limit it to those that are federally, provincially, or municipally recognized. And I know there was some talk as well around the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation that just passed, and for displaying signs, you know, recognizing our location here in support of First Nations communities, as well as some of the activities that were going on at City Hall in recognition of that first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So in allowing those kind of activities to be promoted through residential signage, and what the proposed amendment would speak to is sort of one sign per residential property, limited in size and area to those similar to what you would have seen from the Halloween accessibility signs, just for consistency purposes. Obviously, we don't want them in, you know, daylight triangles, and you know, there are a number of technical considerations like that. We were looking as well at a 14 or 21 day time span for signage to be displayed prior to the holiday or event, and then removal, of course, again within 3 days following the end of the event. So while we're trying to make it as open as possible, we do obviously not want to encourage, you know, blanketing of residential properties with signs. So in support of certainly this very important recognition for Remembrance Day, and in the hopes of trying to open it up for additional holidays as may be appropriate moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, if there, so I'm kind of a visual guy, so I would really like to have an opportunity to look at a calendar and see how, I can't remember all the holidays or events that we recognize. So I really need to see something. I need to see if there's overlap. And then I need to also think about the overlap of other elections and stuff where there's going to be even more signs. Not that those signs even really matter, but I really need to see something, and so I wonder if there's an opportunity to kind of separate Remembrance Day from all of the other signs, so that we can at least have the opportunity to kind of see what we're getting into. Because as of right now, the way this motion is written, I can't picture all the holidays and everything that I think it may capture. And I worry about just that, about, where we've been trying to limit the amount of signs. Our bylaw officers go out and they're taking down signs and all the ones that are illegal, and then we're now going to say that some can and some can't, which if that's what we're going to say, if that's what council is going to do, then I'm okay with that. But I think I need to see what holidays are out there, what events are out there, what kind of overlap there is. So Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Bowman. Councillor Bowman, are you okay if I request that we just remove Remembrance Day, support that here today to go to council, and then ask for the balance of the holidays and events be referred to council or back to staff to be able to come back with kind of those events and what we might be getting ourselves into?
Absolutely, Councillor Paleshi. This was the intent of this was to bring forward Remembrance Day and get these signs out there as quickly as we can to recognize our veterans.
And for sure, and that's what I figured, Councillor, and thank you for bringing this forward. Thanks again to Henry for coming to put forward this request. And I think that's what I would move then, Mr. Chair, is to separate Remembrance Day, refer the rest back to staff.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Paleshi. Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question through you to staff. If we, and I'm supportive of the idea of allowing for this Remembrance Day sign, but I want to make sure, is there a distinction between this sign, which we have seen here tonight, and other signs that folks may on their own or through other organizations put up to support veterans?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there would not be. The recognition, the sign bylaw itself cannot regulate the content of the signage or the distributor of the signs. So any signage that would be in promotion of the Remembrance Day recognition and any ceremonies associated with that would be a permitted sign under this, if it met, of course, the size limitation and the time frame for display.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vicente. And I see Councillor Santos is fine considering the amendment proposed by Councillor Paleshi, which has been accepted by Councillor Bowman. But you did ask for a separation, Councillor Paleshi?
Yep, I think that the recognition of the holiday and events by means of signage be referred to staff for further investigation and consideration.
Okay, and
report back to council.
Okay, thank you. And there has been a recorded vote requested by Councillor Willens. I'll hand it over to you, City Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to members of committee, all in favor of the motion from Councillor Bowman, as shown on the screen, please indicate. Councillor Santos.
Yes.
Councillor Vicente.
In favor.
Councillor Willens.
Yes.
Councillor Paleshi.
Yes, as amended.
Councillor Bowman.
Yes.
Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Singh.
Yes.
Councillor Dillon.
Yes.
Chair Medeiros.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously 9-0.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next item, item 6.4, delegation from Dave Capel regarding Brampton Frontrunner City of Urban SDGs and UN Habitats World Urban Pavilion Urban Economy Forum 2021. And I'll hand it over to you, City Clerk, to administer the delegation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Dave Capel was, you may recall this item was referred to this committee from, I believe it was council on September 29th. And Dave Capel is not present at the moment. We have reached out to him to see if he wishes to join the meeting. He did receive the coordinates for today's meeting. However, there is a staff presentation, item 7.5, and a related staff report, item 10.3, that would be considered before the delegation. So I'm in the hands of committee if you wish to proceed with this item now, as it is next on the agenda, but the delegate that was registered, Dave Capel, is not present in the meeting.
Yeah, I would like to, if that's okay, unless other members of committee oppose, proceed with the presentation and staff report. So I'll hand it over to, I believe, Gurdeep Kaur, Director of Strategic Projects, and Yvonne Young, our Manager, Urban Design Planning, Building Economic Development. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Medeiros and fellow councillors, community members, and fellow staff. My name is Gurdeep Kaur. I'm the Director of Strategic Projects, Planning, Building, and Economic Development. I'm joined today by Yvonne Young, Manager of Urban Design, and at this time, we're going to be updating you on Urban Economic Forum and UN Habitat.
Just a moment, we're just bringing up the right presentation. It's 7.5, Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide. This is a unique opportunity for Canada as a nation. A Canadian city, in this case, is Brampton, that we have received an invitation from UN Habitat, which is a subset of United Nations, and also UEF, the Urban Economy Forum, which is a nonprofit organization that particularly focus on providing international forum for collaboration. And the goal is to, through all these umbrellas together, to establish one project, which is called the World Urban Pavilion. Primarily, it's a meeting place, it's a virtual world, but it's also a place that can attract both public and private collaboration, investment, and research to further the sustainable development goal. Next slide. So in 2020, City of Brampton was approached by United Nations, UN Habitat, and Urban Economy Forum as a potential partner on furthering the Urban SDG Cities Initiative. And the primarily idea and the reason why Brampton has attracted this partnership opportunity is because of the Vision 2040, the big shift about moving city building practices from an auto-oriented to transit-oriented, walkable communities has really demonstrated the core values of the SDG cities. From an international perspective, 80% of the development world is designed surrounding of a neighborhood that is surrounding the automobile. So this has a significant opportunity to demonstrate best city practices. Next slide. And I'll turn it to Gurdeep.
Thank you, Yvonne. At this time, I would like to discuss the third Urban Economic Forum event that Brampton had the privilege and honor of hosting. This took place from October the 4th to October the 6th with the assistance of the mayor, councillors, and fellow staff. Urban Economic Forum 2021 was held in collaboration with United Nations Habitat and virtually hosted by the City of Brampton. We had the opportunity and we brought together nearly 250 speakers from various disciplines, regions. This includes ministers, mayors, city leaders, academics, private sector reps, and community members. We were joined by over 100 cities that participated to discuss how cities and towns can move forward together in a sustainable urban manner. UEF 2021's main theme this year focused on housing and urban recovery and the crisis cities are facing, such as climate change, the housing crisis, the current global pandemic, and the growing inequalities. The forum hosted 21 different sessions throughout the 2.5 days, including 1 minstrel, 2 mayoral, and 1 African Cities Roundtable. And this all contributed to the major outcome of the forum, which now is the UEF 2021 resolution. Throughout the event, participants had the opportunity to exchange ideas, models, and examples on how to achieve sustainable housing and a pathway toward urban recovery. It was a very successful event, and it was a very unique opportunity for Brampton. At this time, Brampton is in collaboration with UEF and working on finalizing an MOU for future development. Thank you. Over to you, Yvonne.
Next slide. So what's shown on screen is the showcase of the collection of leadership. It's primarily focusing on orchestrating innovation through collaboration between academia, civic leadership, and also international presence as well. Next slide. This partnership initiative also aligned with a number of council direction, particularly starting with 2018 through council endorsement of the Brampton 2040 vision. It signaled a very innovative way to make the shift from car-oriented past to a transit-oriented future, and also support council declare of the climate emergency, which is setting ambitious target to demonstrate how we can improve the physical environment in a holistic way that aligns with a lot of the sustainable development goals. And lastly is that in 2020, through this collaboration, we're looking at a format of 5-year collaboration, particularly focusing on 3 different initiatives. Next slide. So in November 2020, UN Habitat and UEF together, they announced the opening of the World Urban Pavilion in Regent Park. And primarily, it would include a virtual, but also a physical space for the collaboration, celebrating innovation in sustainable city building practices. Part of that package has also provided a proposal to name a virtual platform after Brampton. So that is called the Brampton Virtual Street. The idea is to use that as a digital window to the world and have this to be designed through the design school from Harvard University, and using that to showcase Brampton alongside with other international cities as everybody is working on different projects looking at a economic perspective, environmental perspective, and other initiative, and how different cities is moving towards achieving sustainable development goals. So this is significant in terms of city building because according to United Nations, well-designed, compact, walkable cities with good public transport greatly reduce our per capita carbon footprint and are key to achieving many of the sustainable development goals. Next slide. So United Nations has set a target to achieve sustainable development goals by 2030. We are now 2021. So with 9 years away, we have a unique opportunity for the city of Brampton through this partnership to be the heart of this global action. So a number of the initiatives together also combine the opportunity for Brampton to participate as part of the International City Leaders Network, participate at presentation at the UN Assembly, participate at forum that can attract international investment so that we can accelerate the delivery of many number of the innovation the city has currently working on. Off to you, Gurdeep.
Thank you, Vaughn. At this time, we also have present with us Alex and Raza from UN Pavilion and UEF. If there are any questions, they're more than happy to answer for us.
Okay, thank you very much. I do not see any questions from members of committee, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente to receive the staff presentation, and the motion taken as read. Is there anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion carries. Thank you very much. Our next item
Mr. Chair?
is, yes.
Sorry, we do have the referred item 10.3, which is the corresponding staff report. That should be approved as well for committee's consideration.
Yeah, and the staff report as noted by City Clerk, motion moved by Councillor Willens to receive the staff report. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Thank you. We now, if I'm not mistaken, City Clerk, we move on to item 7.3 regarding bonusing.
The first item before that, through you, Mr. Chair, would be 6.5, possible delegations about site-specific amendment to the sign bylaw, Jaguar Land Rover
yes.
Brampton.
That's right. So item 6.5, are there any delegations?
There are no delegations in response to the public notice issued on this item.
Okay, so there is a corresponding staff report, item 7.9. Are there any questions by members of committee regarding the staff report? I see none, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Dillon to move the motion regarding the bylaw, and we will take it as read. Is there anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion carries. So we now go on to staff presentation regarding implementation of Section 37 density bonusing with the transition period of Section 37. And I will hand it over to staff for a presentation.
So, Mr. Chair, joining us today is Bindu Shah from City Staff, and following Bindu's presentation, we do have the added delegation 6.7 from Sylvia Roberts in regard to this item. So, Bindu, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council, staff, and residents watching online. My name is Bindu Shah. I'm a principal planner with the city, and I'll be speaking on the proposed implementation of Section 37 density bonusing within the transition period of the said Section 37. With me, I have Bob BRK, Director of Planning, City Planning and Design, and Andrew McNeil, Manager of Official Plan and Growth Management, to answer any questions. Next slide, please. As a background to the presentation, this slide provides a quick overview of affordable housing provision and the common tools used to secure it. The providers are listed in the left column. In Brampton, we have the region of Peel, then we have private nonprofits such as Habitat for Humanity, and last, sometimes for-profits also provide some amount of affordable housing if they receive funding for it, federal, provincial, or municipal funding and incentives. The column on the right shows the common tools used to improve the supply of affordable housing. The first one is inclusionary zoning, which is upcoming, and Brampton, like other cities, is working on inclusionary zoning policy. What inclusionary zoning will do is it will require that developers build a certain percentage of their total units and develop them as affordable units with or without offsets. Number two, Section 37 of the Planning Act permits the city to authorize increase in permitted height and/or density through the zoning bylaw in return for community benefits. So in exchange for an acceptable increase of heights or density, the city can ask for certain local benefits such as better parks, daycares, community centers, public art, and a certain number of units in the building to be affordable units. Number three, MZO, Minister's Zoning Order. It's not really a municipal tool, but municipalities have a role to play in it. It's a tool where the minister can approve a special zoning on a site. And under a new Bill 197, the minister now has additional power to require a certain number of affordable housing within the MZOs that he approves. And number four, of course, is our official plan policies and zoning, which are important tools to improve housing affordability. They also permit naturally affordable housing typologies such as second units, and now recently with Bill 108, the new additional residential units or garden units as they are called in Brampton. Next slide, please. So Housing Brampton, as we know, was endorsed in May 2021. Reviewing Section 37 along with other available municipal tools is a key action item of the strategy. Next slide, please. The Housing Brampton recommendation report included a recommendation, number 5, regarding implementation of available tools for affordable housing. Next slide, please. Section 37 has two aspects, the original density bonusing clause and the updated CBC clause. This was presented in a council workshop earlier, so I'll be brief. The duration between September 2020 and September 2022 is considered the transition period of Section 37. Within this period, a city can continue with density bonusing bylaws. They can be enacted until the earlier of September 2022 or the enactment of a CBC bylaw. The key difference between density bonusing and CBC is that density bonusing is negotiated on a site-specific basis, and it relies on the uplift value, which is the difference between what a property is valued at prior to rezoning and after rezoning. The CBC, on the other hand, once it is established, will be based on a standard percentage of the final land value after rezoning. I'd like to add here that if council approved today's recommendations, Brampton will launch density bonusing, and it will be applicable only to new applications, new full applications that come in after the launch date, so, which is council endorsement of this recommendation report. Next slide, please. Following council direction on Housing Brampton in May, staff prepared some process parameters to implement Section 37 density bonusing within this transition period. On June 28, 2021, staff brought forward a presentation to a council workshop on Section 37 and presented and discussed a simplified approach to density bonusing, considering that we have a short period left to implement it. On the slide, you will see details that were presented within that workshop. Brampton's official plan has the right policies related to density bonusing, so no official plan amendment is required before beginning the implementation. Staff also presented benchmarking, which is attached as an appendix to this report today. And benchmarking showed how other cities have used this. We have a lot we can use and learn from their experiences. There were many great ideas that were presented, including using benefits such as public art, bus shelters, rental units, providing transit passes to purchasers of the new units, land for affordable housing to be set aside, etc. And we learned that there are many different approaches and parameters, and you can, they have gone too detailed, like lots of additional studies or assessments were required from developers. But since we have density bonusing for a short duration, our recommendation and our approach that we think would be best for Brampton is a very simplified implementation plan that does not require additional studies from developers and does not extend the development review process. And our proposed plan takes into account cities' priorities and needs also. Next slide, please. After the workshop, council workshop, staff further refined the process and finalized supports that will be required if we were to go down this path, such as appraisal reports will be required. So we have prepared terms of reference, a list of appraisers. A reserve fund is also required to park the cash contributions that may come forward. So we brought forward a report to council for establishment of a Section 37 reserve fund, which is called Reserve Number 33 Community Benefits. This was endorsed by Council on July 7th, 2021. Then we also presented the proposed implementation plan to a meeting with Build on September 16 and with other development applicants at the city during August and September. We have not received any informal comments or any other comments from Build or the other participants at that session. Today, we are here before committee with a recommendation report for direction to officially launch this initiative. Legal staff, as I said, have advised that no official plan amendment is required. However, once council endorses, that will become the formal launch date. And what that will do is provide a lot of certainty and clarity to the development industry. Next slide, please. Apart from using density bonusing, we are also preparing for the updated and the new Section 37, which is community benefit charges, which has a broader applicability than density bonusing. So on the right column, you will see that CBCs may be imposed on a number of development application processes, such as zoning bylaw amendments, minor variances, consents, subdivisions. So its applicability, which will be much more broader. Next slide, please. So here's what we are working on for the CBC framework. Here's how we plan to transition to the updated version of Section 37. This work will be carried out in 2 phases. Beginning at the end of this month, we will start procurement for the first phase, which is an assessment report, which will be followed by a full strategy and a bylaw. And we have estimated that the final approved CBC, if that is the path, will be in place by September 2022. Next slide, please. As mentioned previously, there are a number of reasons Brampton can benefit from density bonusing in this transition period. They are listed here. I'd just like to add that now that housing strategy is approved, now that Brampton has started receiving a really high number of development applications that will qualify for density bonusing, and the city's focus through various initiatives is to create complete communities. So here the idea is that extra density can benefit from extra community benefits. When we completed our benchmarking, we came to numerous OMB decisions that included wording like, and I can quote here from one decision, was that if the area residents must put up with increased height, massing, and congestion caused by the developer getting additional development rights, the public should receive some tangible benefit. That's the theory behind a Section 37 bonus. And this was in OMB decision number 926. Next slide, please. When we looked at Toronto, density bonusing has been used for many benefits. Then we focused on housing, and we found that majority of the time for housing purposes, they could negotiate for cash contributions, and they would pool the cash contribution and then use that for various housing related initiatives. There are many other housing benefits as listed in this chart. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we completed this benchmarking to see how cities have implemented density bonusing. When we spoke to certain planners in these cities, one advice we received was to keep it really simple given the short implementation period. Next slide, please. This is 2 more examples. Next slide, please. Based on all this work, staff have prepared an implementation plan. We have figured out what kind of projects would be eligible, and on the slide here, you will see that we would like rezoning applications that propose an increase in density heights from the existing zoning permissions, but we would kind of focus on mid to high density residential developments across Brampton. So offices and commercial and other uses would be not considered for this initiative. And we would, it will only apply to applications that are deemed as complete after council endorsement. Affordable housing and senior housing projects may be exempt, and why I say maybe, although we do want to exempt them, is that sometimes it could be a very large development application with just one part of it being affordable. So based on a case-by-case basis, we will look at that. Next slide, please. This is what we presented at the council workshop. Again, we came to a conclusion of just 2 high-level principles to keep in mind. The development must represent good planning so that when an application is being reviewed, it should be considered that staff should consider that proposed density and height makes sense in that context, and that any amenities or features that are required normally in a development application are not considered as eligible community benefits. Next slide, please. The second one is there should be a reasonable planning relationship between the benefits and the development. So in terms of location priority, we would like the in-kind contributions, say bus shelters, to be located on or in the vicinity of the site. If it is a cash contribution, it may be used for local initiatives, or if there are no local initiatives being planned or feasible, then it can be used for citywide capital projects. Next slide, please. In terms of benefit priority, we started with Housing Brampton, so we are trying to align with Housing Brampton. So affordable housing has been established as a priority through Housing Brampton by council. So we would like some in-kind contribution to be either units, ownership, rental units, affordable units, and cash contribution can be used towards the Housing Brampton Catalyst Capital project, which has been now approved by council with an initial contribution amount of $4 million. So we can add to that and provide more innovative housing to the city. However, we depending on the situation, we realize that other benefits are also very important, such as transit infrastructure, park improvements, etc. The city's transit department is keen to join this initiative and use density bonusing for potential enhanced transit infrastructure. So at the end, it will be like the ward councillors will meet with staff to decide the priority benefit on a side-by-side basis. And if ward councillors feel that transit or public art or other initiatives are a priority within their ward, then those will be considered. Next slide, please. Here's a list of parameters that staff will use to understand the contribution amount that will be negotiated further. The ward councillors, as I said, will always be consulted by city planning staff prior to any negotiation of Section 37 community benefits with the applicant. Next slide, please. This slide shows a process chart showing how city staff, the councillors, and the developer will be involved in determining, negotiating, and implementing Section 37 density bonusing. For simplicity's sake, we propose that cash contributions be seen as easiest approach if the developer finds in-kind benefits are not feasible. So we have that option of payment of cash in lieu to our finance department after the recommendation report stage of the application. So this will avoid a Section 37 agreement and those kind of details and exercises to be undertaken. After the recommendation report, the developer just provides the cash in lieu, which can be used by the city for various initiatives. So to reiterate again, if council approves the recommendation report today, staff will launch density bonusing from the date of endorsement of the recommendation report. All full development applications that qualify will be eligible, and this will, of course, not be applied retroactively. This concludes our presentation. On the next slide, you will find our contact information. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a delegation from Sylvia Roberts. Perhaps we'll hear the delegation first. I see there's a question on the board after the presentation, but normally we'll go to the delegation first. So Sylvia, you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee on this matter.
Hello again. The Section 37, using Section 37 actually makes an enormous amount of sense, and frankly, by the fact that the city has not used it. As to what to spend it on, a quote attributed to Archimedes is, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." Often the most effective way to apply force isn't with brute strength, it's using leverage. It's also applicable to density bonusing. The most effective way to make housing more affordable isn't through attempting to coerce cash in lieu from developers. Toronto gets most of its Section 37 benefits spent on housing, and it actually has extremely little to show for it. Reducing the need for cars saves dramatically more money. A single articulated bus will move hundreds of people a day, allowing many households to eliminate the ownership of a car. CAA, the motorist lobby effectively, estimates the true cost of car ownership in excess of $10,000 a year. It's over $800 a month. When you adjust for Brampton's car insurance, we're probably talking more like $900 or $1,000 per month saved by eliminating a single car. Even 25% of the people who'd be taking buses were to get rid of a car. Just that one articulated bus would save on the order of $30,000 per month. On the other hand, with Section 37 funding for the cost of one articulated bus, you could get a grand total of 4 one-bedroom units, maybe. And if people are only spending 3% of their income as opposed to market rate, together those 4 units would be saving maybe $3,000 a month versus market rate. So the council really needs, councillors, when they're negotiating benefits, really need to decide which to you sounds like better return on better return for residents, $30,000 a month or $3,000 a month. It's literally an order of magnitude. In addition to it simply making more financial sense to prioritize funding transit, there's also a very good logical connection between transit and Section 37. Many of these applications proposing significantly more density than originally planned for intensification are much more heavily reliant on transit than our current development charges account for. And often they specifically use high levels of such as the to get their density should be permitted so much above and beyond what the city had been proposing. For example, if you take a close look at the proposed application for Queen opposite of Beaumaris, which will include the extension of Paleshi Drive, when you start looking at the DCs and compare it to how many trips are probably going to be generated from the site, the DCs don't actually cover the costs to provide transit for those new residents, for at least for the capital cost. The property tax revenue will come from the operations, but the DCs don't fund the capital cost. It would be entirely appropriate Section 37 benefits to go towards buying buses and helping contribute towards building the Queen Street BRT. It's an amenity to the residents. It is also a benefit to the residents around it. Growth should actually pay for growth. And if you're using the Section 37 benefits for something other than transit, we're not actually doing that. And what you're instead going to do is underfund transit service. The cost of the Queen Street BRT for the lane conversion option is actually quite affordable, and realistically, if the city's smart about it, you could fund the entire municipal cost just from Section 37 benefits. It's something to be mindful of when councillors go and negotiate with developers. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you, Sylvia. Mr. Chair, so we have the presentation, and there is the staff report 7.4, and I think Councillor Willens has a question.
Yep, thank you very much, City Clerk. Councillor Willens.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. Just a quick question, and Ken, you did say you're going to be coming back to the ward councillors and at a future date as we move forward. Can something that you may want to put on the radar? I'm just wondering whether under these new community benefits or the cash in lieu, if you can look at, can we put that towards, and particularly I'm looking at the community energy plan recommendations and policy directions under the Heritage Height Community Energy Plan. If there's something we can use there that's going to perhaps maybe bring in, use that towards a district energy center or solar at our facilities, what may be in there that are owned by the facility, by the city, by the municipality, if we can use that, because that in itself is a community benefit. So I don't want to go on about it tonight, but maybe if you can sort of look in there, if we can use it for that, that would be great. And when you meet with the ward councillors.
Okay, Councillor Willens, Was that a question or just consideration for staff?
More just a consideration, just to put it on the radar, because I know that they did say they'd be meeting with us and talking to us, so more of a consideration. I didn't see it in the report. It did give a list of other things it can be used for, like public art and social services. So I think I'm not out of the line if we may be able to look and stretch it a bit and try and put it towards our community energy plan through our SERP.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Willens. Does the staff want to provide any comment regarding Councillor Willens?
I could just, Bob Bierke here, Director of City Planning Design. Councillor Willens, we can have further conversation when we go around to the individual councillors. I know the intent is to try and tie the benefits to the areas close to or in the development area. And the initial thought that we had is sort of building on the Housing Brampton approach was to look at affordable housing and then also looking at some of the other potential benefits. But there's certainly scope for flexibility in that, and that's something we can certainly pursue with you when we sit down and go through some of the options.
Yeah, that's great, Bob. Thanks, because I'm glad you mentioned affordable housing, because on the end of the SERP, it does mention that the energy savings and that has to be equitable. So that's good to hear that. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Councillor Willens. Thank you, staff. And I do have a motion moved by Councillor Willens to receive the staff presentation, move the staff report recommendations, and receive the delegation. The motion is taken as read. Is there anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion carries. We now move on to item 7.7, staff presentation regarding 2021 development and investment activity. So I will hand it over to staff for our staff presentation regarding 2021 development and investment activity.
Carolyn, you can unmute your mic, and we're just going to bring your presentation up on the screen momentarily.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carolyn Crozier, Strategic Leader with City Planning and Design, and I'm here to highlight 3 of the reports that are before you this evening that really speak to and recognize the heightened level of activity in development and investment we're seeing across the city in development applications, building permits, and just investment generally. Also touching on our department's efforts to stimulate the economy through the creation of an expeditious approval process for industrial development. And finally, just to touch on our department's ongoing efforts in building a robust continuous improvement culture. And really, it's a nice narrative when you look at the reports together. They really help reinforce that council's decisions in where and how Brampton should grow are paying dividends. And it's also an indicator that confidence to invest in Brampton from the development industry and the business community is high. Next slide, please. And as that gets teed up, the first report I'd just like to draw your attention to is the 2021 Development Activity Report. And before I speak to these pretty impressive numbers that you see on the screen, I just wanted to take one quick minute to recognize the great work of Alaha Safi, who along with other members of our team have really been instrumental in developing our data analytics, some of which we're going to be looking at here tonight. So thank you to the team for that. So in spite of all of the disruptions caused by COVID-19, 2021 has been an exceptionally busy year for the team in planning, building, and economic development. These are just a few key highlights from the report. There's a lot more information in there for you to review. But really just to highlight, year to date, we have seen a 75% increase in development applications across the city. We're approaching nearly a 50% increase in building permit applications. And that figure of $11.2 million represents the building permit revenue generated to date. And then finally, the figure of 0.7% is representing the office vacancy rate, which is the lowest it's been in nearly 8 years. So I'd mentioned before that there's a great deal of confidence from industry in the city of Brampton, and I believe that these numbers really do reflect that. And really to ensure we maintain that level of confidence and our team's great track record of customer service, our levels of service as well. We are implementing continuous improvement initiatives as well as looking to increase our full-time complement through the 2022 budget process. And those two pillars, having more people to do the great work and also continuing our journey through continuous improvement, are going to be really critical to ensure we don't risk the gains that we've made over the past year through the hard work of staff, council's previous investments in technology, including Excella, and the 2021 full-time staff increase that we received. Next slide, please. So the next report I'd like to highlight is the Expedited Industrial Approvals Report, which is a bit of a mouthful. And this is an example of our continuous improvement initiatives that we're undertaking in the department. This new process is slated for implementation in early 2022. And this new approvals process will exempt certain industrial developments from a site plan review and move them instead into a modified building permit process. We have a cross-departmental working group that is working to finalize the submission details, review, and implementation for this expedited review, which, when in place, and as you can see on the screen, is going to really create significant reductions in approval timelines while also protecting for city interests. And, I think we all recognize and understand that the quicker a development is approved, the quicker shovels get in the ground, which helps to generate jobs and support the local economy, which is more critical than ever as we look to support post-pandemic economic recovery. So this new expedited industrial approvals process will work to increase the city's economic competitiveness, putting us on par with some of the processes we see with our neighbor and city of Mississauga. And it will help to support that continued confidence of industry to invest in Brampton. Next slide, please. The final report I'm just going to bring your attention to is just for information purposes only, but the department is going to be seeking funding from the province to further support our continuous improvement initiatives. The province's 2021 Audit and Accountability Fund provides funding to projects that focus on modernization, integration, and streamlining of application processes. The details of and the exact projects that we will be submitting to the province for consideration are still being finalized at this time. The deadline for submission is coming up quickly, October 28th, and we will hear back, excuse me, in January, should we be successful on any of the submissions that we make. And we'll certainly be returning to Planning and Development Committee to provide updates on any success that we do have. Next slide. So that brings me to the end of this presentation, just highlighting some of the great stuff that's happening in planning, building, and economic development. And I think the presentation really just demonstrates that we're realizing record levels of activity, we're maintaining our core service delivery, and we really are embracing new ways of business through leveraging our technology, continuous improvement, and working collaboratively, not just within our department, but across the corporation and with our partners in the community. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
So, Mr. Chair, it's Richard. If I could just provide a few comments, and thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Carolyn, for your presentation. And I just want to express my appreciation for staff. We have, when we moved through COVID, we were able to pivot and get a lot of applications and a lot of permits and a lot of things going on. Just through that whole process where staff were completely on board and completely moving forward through a lot of, process improvements and technology improvements and all those kind of good things. So I want to express my appreciation for Carolyn and her team, and who's helping us to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and I do echo those comments, and I think collectively as a council, to all members of committee and of council. We certainly put the challenge out to staff at the beginning of this term, wanting to be competitive, wanting to be a jurisdiction of choice for investment, and especially in this area. And staff certainly has risen to the occasion, and has certainly, especially during COVID, really demonstrated the great work, and it's really demonstrated in this evidence and facts which have been presented in the numerous reports. I do not see any questions or comments by my colleagues, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Singh, which receives the presentation and all the accompanying reports as listed in the items. I would actually request a recorded vote on this, City Clerk. I just think that, especially regarding what we heard from the presentation, I think it's important that all members unanimously support this type of work that's being done, and the results in the numerous reports in the activity. So I'd request a recorded vote on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a recorded vote's been requested on receiving the presentation 7.7 and approving the 3 staff reports 7.10, 7.11, and 7.12. All in favor, please indicate. Councillor Santos.
Yes.
Councillor Vasante.
Yes, in favor.
Councillor Willens.
Yes.
Councillor Paleshi.
Yes.
Councillor Bowman.
Yes.
Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Singh.
Yes.
Councillor Dillon.
Yes.
Chair Medeiros.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously, 9-0.
Thank you very much. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, City Clerk, we are now on to Councillor question period.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so are there any questions from members of committee? I see none. City Clerk, do we have any questions from the public?
There are no questions this evening.
Okay, as I do not see there are any questions of the public. Now we're on referred matters. Are there any questions regarding the referred matters? I see none. And my apologies, I skipped that. And we are now on to adjournment. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to adjourn tonight's meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is November 1st at 7 p.m. Thank you to staff, and thank you to my colleagues. And we will see each other on November 1st. Motion to adjourn. Anyone opposed? I see none. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, this meeting is now adjourned. We're just going to wait for the live stream to end.